Everyone is talking about whether Kevin Stefanski should stay or go. But around the league, that's not the real concern. The real concern is this. If the Browns move on from Stefanski, do they actually know what comes next? Because firing a head coach isn't chaos. Firing without a plan is dot, and right now, that's exactly what people inside NFL circles are questioning.
How much of a shot in the arm was it to have this many rookies? I've never seen a rookie minicamp like the one you guys had a couple of weeks ago, but we had like 60 guys here.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's how it used to be done in the NFL. You used to have really an open tryout, quote unquote, and you had a lot of guys that were local players. You'd have, as many D3, 1AA kids locally that could drive, just so that you could field a full football team. So you'd have your draft picks.
The Browns haven't officially announced anything yet. Kevin Stefanski is still the head coach on paper, but if you listen carefully to how this situation is being discussed around the league, you can tell something important has shifted. This is no longer a conversation about wins and losses. It's not about play-calling tendencies. It's not even about whether Stefanski has maximized the roster. The conversation has moved to process. And that shift matters more than people realize. Because in today's NFL, firing a head coach isn't shocking. It happens every year. Sometimes it's justified. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's overdue. What does get people's attention is how prepared a team looks when the conversation starts. League executives, media insiders, and former front office voices aren't asking, is Stefanski a good coach? They're asking a much quieter and much more dangerous question. If Cleveland moves on, who were they already prepared to hire? That's where the uncertainty begins. Front offices don't wake up one morning and decide to start over. At least, successful ones don't. These decisions are usually preceded by months of internal discussion. Which coaches could realistically become available? Which candidates fit the current roster construction? How the quarterback situation affects the hire? Whether ownership is aligned on timeline and patience, that planning almost always happens before a move becomes public. And when that preparation is in place, teams usually signal it quickly. A name leaks. A direction becomes obvious. The market understands who's in control. That hasn't happened here. Instead, the Browns have found themselves at the center of speculation without clarity. And silence in the NFL rarely stays neutral, because while Cleveland has remained quiet, the coaching market hasn't. Other teams have moved aggressively. Timelines have accelerated. Preferred candidates have started to disappear from realistic availability. And that's why this situation is being framed less as a debate about Stefanski and more as a question about readiness, not readiness to fire, readiness to replace. That distinction is critical. Around the league, when a team appears hesitant at this stage, it raises eyebrows. Not because they're wrong, but because hesitation often means alignment issues behind the scenes. Is ownership pushing urgency? Is the front office thinking long-term? Is the roster built to win now, or does it need a reset? Those questions don't disappear just because a decision hasn't been announced yet. They intensify, and the longer answers aren't visible, the more the narrative forms on its own. That's why you're hearing fewer arguments about Stefanski's performance and more commentary about Cleveland's direction, because if the Browns truly believe the roster is ready to compete immediately, then the next coach would need to reflect that belief, and if they don't, then
what you guys are doing, I think that'd be unfair to the football team. With all due respect.
Hey, come on! You see Jerry Jones do it, right? You can do it, Kev. Come on, jump in.
He can do what he wants.
That he can. Yeah, and I talked about how everybody's focused. The QB tracker. We're all looking at the quarterbacks. When do you want to have a starter in mind so you can just get ready for Week 1?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're not there yet. I'm really pleased with the group. I'm pleased with how everybody's progressing. It's going to come sooner than later, but I don't have an exact day in mind. I'm pleased with the group. I'm pleased with the progress. What I've said all along is I'm going to let this play out. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. I'm not going to rush a decision or anything like that. I'm going to do what I think is best for the football team. When that comes, it'll be sooner than later.
Then this becomes a fundamentally different search, one that requires patience and protection. The problem is that So far, there hasn't been a clear signal pointing in either direction. No public commitment to urgency. No framing around development. No indication of whether experience or upside would be prioritized. That ambiguity creates risk, because when teams wait too long to define their intent, the market defines it for them, media speculation hardens, fan expectations climb, and pressure begins influencing decisions that should be made. Calmly, that's how franchises end up reacting instead of leading, and this is why the Browns situation feels heavier than a normal coaching debate. It's not that Stefanski's future is being questioned. It's that the absence of visible preparation has shifted how the league is interpreting everything. At this stage, Cleveland isn't being judged on whether they should make a move. They're being judged on whether they already knew what they would do before the conversation ever went public. Because in the NFL, clarity isn't just communication, it's leverage, and right now, Cleveland hasn't shown its hand, which means every day that passes doesn't just delay a decision, it raises the standard the next move will be judged against. That's the position the Browns are in now. Not late, not panicked, but unmistakably on the clock. There is another interpretation of what's happening in Cleveland that deserves to be taken seriously. The Browns may not be disorganized. They may not be panicking. They may be waiting by design. In today's NFL, not every coaching search follows the same rhythm. Some front offices move quickly because their preferred candidates are immediately available. Others slow the process intentionally when the coach they want isn't technically on the market yet. From that perspective, silence doesn't automatically mean confusion. Sometimes it means discretion. Not every conversation happens in public. Not every relationship is meant to surface through leaks. And not every plan is supposed to be obvious before the timing is right. That's the most charitable and possibly accurate read of Cleveland's approach, but even if the Browns are waiting on purpose, that strategy still carries significant risk. Because waiting changes how the rest of the league interacts with you. While Cleveland holds its position, the market keeps moving. Other teams don't pause their timelines out of respect. They accelerate them. Candidates adjust expectations. Agents field calls. And momentum starts to form around organizations that appear decisive. That doesn't mean Cleveland is falling behind, but it does mean the margin for error is shrinking. The longer a team waits, the more the conversation gets framed externally. Media speculation fills in gaps. Fan anxiety grows louder. And internal pressure begins to mount, even if leadership remains calm. This is where patience quietly turns into vulnerability, because at some point, silence stops being interpreted as strategy and starts being read as hesitation, and hesitation is dangerous in an environment where confidence matters almost as much as competence. Right now, the Browns are being evaluated on two parallel tracks across the league. The first is credibility. Do people inside NFL circles believe Cleveland already knows who it wants? Or do they believe the organization is gathering names in real time, reacting to momentum rather than controlling it? That perception matters. Coaches don't just choose teams based on money or roster. They choose based on organizational confidence. A clear vision attracts candidates. Ambiguity repels them. The second track is alignment. Who is this next hire actually for? A veteran head coach suggests the Browns believe the roster is ready to win immediately. That decision carries urgency, and it also shortens patience. If results don't show quickly, explanations become harder. Experience removes excuses. A younger developmental coach sends the opposite message. It signals a longer runway, more tolerance for early losses, and a willingness to grow through mistakes. But that path only works if the organization is genuinely prepared to protect it, because young coaches don't just need time. They need internal stability, clear expectations, consistent messaging, and support when progress doesn't immediately show up in the standings. Without that protection, upside gets mislabeled as failure, and this is where Cleveland's situation becomes complicated. So far, there hasn't been a public signal pointing clearly in either direction. No framing that suggests urgency. No language indicating a reset. No commitment to experience or development. That ambiguity leaves room for speculation, and speculation creates noise. Names get mentioned that fit parts of the puzzle but not the whole thing. Some make sense schematically. Others make sense culturally. A few fit neither, but gain traction anyway, and when momentum jumps from name to name without sticking, it suggests uncertainty. That doesn't mean Cleveland lacks a plan. It means the plan isn't visible, and visibility matters because perception shapes leverage. If candidates believe a team is unsure, they gain negotiating power. If agents sense hesitation, they push for clarity elsewhere. If the public believes there's no plan, pressure changes. Decision-making, that's how organizations drift into reactive hires, not because the wrong candidate was available, but because the right candidate required patience the organization could no longer afford, and Cleveland's recent history doesn't provide much margin for error. Here, the Browns have lived through cycles where expectations weren't aligned with reality, where patience ran out before development could finish, where instability turned promising starts into incomplete rebuilds. That history doesn't disappear when a new search begins. It follows the process. This isn't just about choosing the best coach. It's about choosing the coach the organization is prepared to support when things get uncomfortable, because every hire looks good in the announcement. The real test comes months later, when progress is uneven and pressure returns. Waiting can be smart. It can also be costly, and until Cleveland clarifies what kind of timeline it's actually willing to commit to, every day of silence will continue to be interpreted in the least generous way possible. That doesn't mean the Browns are wrong. It means that when they finally move, the decision won't just need to be good. It will need to make sense immediately. It suggests pressure. And pressure changes decision-making. Once an organization feels publicly labeled as having no plan, decisions stop being about fit and start being about survivability. Not the best long-term choice. The most defensible one. That's how chaos actually forms. Not from one bad decision, but from a series of cautious ones made to quiet criticism rather than build something coherent. The Browns don't need a perfect coach. They need a defensible direction, one that ownership, the front office, and the locker room can commit to even when results don't immediately justify it. Because alignment is the only thing that buys patience in this league. Without it, every hire becomes temporary. And temporary solutions don't build stability. They delay accountability. This is the real danger Cleveland faces right now. Not that they make the wrong hire, but that they make a hire without fully committing to the timeline that comes with it. Because once expectations and reality separate, the story writes itself, and by then the name on the headset won't matter.